Everyone was excited for the first Pride event on the island of Sodor. The engines happily trundled around doing their jobs as dancers and horses, and people in bright costumes of all colours of the rainbow worked hard in preparation for the big day. People came out excitedly to see as Pride came to Sodor. And still the engines worked hard, to the pride of the Fat Controller. "You're really useful engines." The Fat Controller went to the engine shed to speak with the excited engines. "As you all know, Pride is coming to Sodor, so I want you all to be on your best behaviour." "Will it be like the circus?" asked Thomas excitedly. "No, it's a different sort of celebration. Now, Thomas, I want you to go to Brendam Docks to help the LGBT dignitaries." "Right away, sir." James and Percy chuckled excitedly to themselves. Thomas trundled on to Brendam Docks and soon found himself a little bemused at the sight before him. If it wasn't a circus, why did it look like a circus? Thomas smiled to himself. Why were there so many clowns? Whatever it is, these Pride people sure look like they know how to have a good time. And then there's the horses. It was a mystery to be sure, but Thomas smiled to himself, excited to be part of the celebration. Thomas was hooked up to Annie and Clarabelle as Salty sidled up beside him. "Aye, matey, what be going on here then?" "They're having a Pride event on Sodor." Suddenly, the band started playing, and Thomas beamed. "What I don't understand," said Thomas thoughtfully, "is if it's not a circus, why are there clowns, and the dancers, and men dressed up as women?" "You can't say that, Thomas. They are women," replied Salty. "But they look like fellas." "But they identify as women." Thomas was more confused than ever, and quickly took his Pride cargo away. Later, after he dropped off his cargo at the Pride ground, he returned to Sodor Station and was greeted by the Fat Controller and a man who looked like him wearing a dress. "Hello, Thomas. This is my sister Beatrice, and we'd like you to take us to the Pride event tomorrow." "But she looks like a fella in a dress." "This is exactly the sort of transphobic attitude I expect when greeted by turf engines." Thomas felt dreadful. He didn't mean to be transphonic, or whatever that word was. Suddenly, Percy sidled up beside him. "Look, it's a fella in a dress," said Percy with a cheeky smile. "That's what I said," replied Thomas. "But apparently that makes me a turf." "Well, you don't look like a layer of matted earth and plant roots to me," chuckled Percy, and Thomas smiled. The next day, Thomas was taking more cargo to the Pride event. He was still concerned about upsetting the Fat Controller's sister. He didn't mean to offend her, but couldn't help but feel that maybe she had overreacted. He was so used to speaking his mind, but he never meant to offend anyone. Further up the line, he found James. "Ha! I hear you misgendered the Fat Controller's sister." "I didn't mean to. She called me a turf." "What does that mean?" "I don't know, but I don't like it." "Just be careful. That LGBT lot aren't happy with you." Thomas trundled on, but couldn't help but be a little worried about what James had said. He hadn't meant to upset anyone. Finally, Thomas reached the Pride ground, but there was no one there to greet him. Then suddenly, 1, 2, 3 of them came out of the bushes. "Turf!" shouted one. Transphobe, shouted another. Hater, called the third. Then they all came out in their droves and stood uncomfortably behind the first three. Thomas felt dreadful. His driver quickly called the Fat Controller. The Fat Controller, Lady Hat and Beatrice were on their way. I've got to say, Topham, I'm not impressed. I expected more from Sodor. I can't believe you still have that little turf engine in service after the way he spoke to me. And now he's upsetting my friends and allies. It's just not good enough. I demand you get rid of him. The Fat Controller just stared out of the window. Pretty soon the Fat Controller arrived to assess the situation, as the driver explained what was going on. How do you feel about all this, Thomas? I'm a bit scared and confused, sir. Why would you care what this little engine thinks? Silence! We've welcomed you, supported you, and done everything in our power to accommodate you, but nothing we seem to do is good enough. Quite frankly, you've behaved appallingly. You've caused disruption on my railway. You've been rude, discourteous, and now you're harassing one of my finest engines. A turf engine? Enough! You're quick to accuse, harass, and intimidate without any regard for the disruption you've brought to Sodor. You demand, you bully, and you expect everyone to accept you and your way of life, while bulldozing your way through the life that already exists here. Well, if you think we're going to stay here for Pride Month to be subjected to your intolerance and transphobia, you can think again. A month? I agreed to one event. We're not having you grinding this island to a halt for a month. See, that's blatant bigotry, that is. Not at all. We agreed to an event. You're pushing for a month. Next thing you know, we're stuck in week 42 of Pride Month and there'll be no sign of you going home. The buck stops here. You have your event and then you go home. We've never been treated so appallingly. Neither have we. The majority here are decent, ordinary people wanting to celebrate. But you and your vocal minority are truly awful people who are not used to being told no. I shall await your apology, Topham. Suit yourself, Bernard. Oh, so you did naming me now, are you? Oh, cough. After everyone had calmed down, it was agreed that the Pride event would go ahead as planned, and Thomas and Percy watched on eagerly as they raised the tents, the band started playing, and Pride began, and everyone had a wonderful time. Later, Thomas sidled into the engine shed. James told us what happened. You okay? Asked Henry. Yes, it's been a funny old day. It was a good thing the Fat Controller put that Pride lot straight, said Percy. But it's like he said. It's not all of them. Most of them are decent, ordinary people. It's a loud vocal minority that spoils it for the rest of them. Why don't they just turf them out? Turf! There's that word again. I still don't know what it means. It's a layer of matted earth and plant roots, said Gordon. It means to expel or throw out, added Emily. It means steak, said Henry. Steak? They all asked. Yeah, surf and turf, prawns and steak. The engines all laughed.